Hi, I'm Todd Raffel with ERE Media. We are here at the ERE conference in San Diego, and it is the first main day of the conference. Yesterday was a pre-conference day, and I'm here with Matt Charney. He was an author of one of the most commented upon articles ever to appear on ERE, actually, certainly one of the most commented in recent memory. And Matt is the social media engagement manager, if I didn't botch that too bad.
That was right.
Okay, at Monster. Have you noticed any interesting trends today so far? I know this is only the first day of the conference.
Sure. I think one of the trends that I'm really seeing emerge, and it certainly speaks about some of the best practices and white papers that I've read recently, is just how much the recession has changed the recruiting structure and the way that things are done. In terms of departments taking a look at internal capabilities and resources and really going from more of the just-in-time sort of hiring to more of a strategic, long-term pipeline relationship building approach. I think that the key word that I've heard throughout the day is engagement, and so often I think recruiters set up a mentality whereby they see themselves as gatekeepers. So it's really refreshing, certainly for me, to see the community speaking about how they can break down that wall, create transparency not only to individual candidates, but also to the other people within the recruiting community. So I think that people are getting out there a lot more and getting much more interested in how they can deliver a strategic business function rather than simply put butts in seats.
Have you gotten a feel at all, and you may not have, I don't know, we haven't talked about it, about the optimism or pessimism here about the job market and the economy? Sometimes people think of the recruiting field as sort of a harbinger or a leading indicator or sometimes a lagging indicator of the economy. Have you gotten an idea about whether people are happy, sad, or somewhere in between?
Well, I know that statistically with the last Monster Employment Index as well as some of the other reports, and anecdotally I'm seeing a lot more jobs too. The job market is definitely improving. I think that the confidence overall seems to be very good. They did a show of hands to lead off this first session today, and when asked, how does everyone feel about recruiting? It's going to be a good year in 2010. Almost unilaterally, hands went up. So I think that there's a lot of optimism, but I think it's much more tempered than maybe we've seen in past recoveries, only because I think that the workforce needs are changing a little bit and taking a look at outsourcing as well as building onto more of a contract and contingency scalable workforce. So I think that certainly while the hiring's picking up and there seems to be an optimism there, I do see that a lot of the focus has shifted from strictly full-time employment placement more towards the contract and contingency sort of arrangements. So.
I know you and I have been talking via email and a little bit by phone about the candidate experience. That's something that you're real passionate about.
Yeah.
That's something you've heard here about yet, or maybe it's too early to say?
I think that it's been a touch point, particularly within social media. How do you get out there? The tools aren't enough. How do you actually present a face to the employment brand? But I think that, in terms of how that plays into the recruitment cycle, haven't heard a lot on that yet, but again, I think with the catchword and buzzword emerging seeming to be engagement, I imagine that will be reflective on a candidate experience level. I just haven't attended any sessions that specifically speak to that at this point in time, but I do sense it.
Do you sense the candidate experience was bad and then we went into a recession and people had even more resumes, so the candidate experience got worse because they had less time and more resumes and fewer people on their staff to deal with them?
I actually think what had happened was, I don't think candidate experience was something that in a go-go job market was really thought about closely, and so that tended towards neglect. And I think given a slowdown in requisition activities and the chance that HR has had to really focus on the fundamentals and learn and best practices, I think what's emerging is more of a focus towards the candidate experience. So I actually think that the lower volume has improved that somewhat, and I think that as those lessons that have been learned in terms of best practices, once the hiring really starts to get going again, are going to be reflected in the way that the candidates are notified and dealt with and engaged with the recruiting community. So
you're talking about lower volume of jobs open, but a higher volume, of course, of people who say I want a job, or my brother wants a job, or my uncle wants a job, my aunt wants a job.
Right, and I personally think that the paradigm shift in corporate recruiting, and one of the people from Starbucks said this earlier, and it really struck me, is that as everything moves a little bit more brand-based and out to social networks, where there's a higher degree of transparency, what I think is likely occurring is that there's a very hard to separate clients and customers. So having a positive candidate experience with an employer, particularly if you have a consumer-facing brand, becomes even that much more important with the accessibility and transparency that is enabled by social recruiting.
And that's much more true, I assume, if you're Adidas or Starbucks. If you're a B2B widget manufacturer, maybe that's a lot different?
I think that the statistics show a very wide cross-section in industry, function, demographics of social media users, so I think that in any business-to-business role, you're still obviously trying to communicate and present a consistent employment brand to that subsection of people. Whether you're selling widgets or whether you're selling shoes or any other consumer packaged goods, I think that the best practices driving it are still there, even though the goal might be a little bit different.
Got it. Well, thanks, Matt. Have a good rest of the conference and a safe trip back. I guess you're not at headquarters in Massachusetts. You're here in Southern California.
That's right. I work out of our LA office.
We'll wish you only a safe drive.
I appreciate it, and look forward to the rest of the conference.
Thanks.
Thanks.